Boogie woogie oogie, my dude. I'm kind of dreading this, I'm not gonna lie to you. And it's not just because the fact that I know Crypt, not personally, but I've been aware of it for a few years now, and I'm in the same way that I was worried about Quadeca and knowing about Quadeca and that influencing my opinion on that video, the first initial video that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of me from. It's the most popular video on my channel. I tried to keep bias aside and give him the criticism that I feel like will help bring him further, right? And that's what this is all about to me. I know this is a really aggressive title that I'm gonna be using for the majority of this video series. This isn't gonna be the last time you see this kind of title, and I'm gonna start doing this on a lot more YouTube rappers. But again, I just always want this to be about friendly and constructive criticism and break down exactly what might be holding back artists from transcending YouTube to me and breaking out of that box just from an outsider's perspective, as well as maybe say some of my own opinions as to why some stuff that they're doing doesn't work for me personally, right? And my own personal account isn't necessarily the account of every other person. It's just my personal account. And one personal account doesn't mean anything, but I think there's some value to have in people's personal reactions to music, especially initial reactions, because that initial reaction is the most important for sure. As far as pretty much every single rapper who is on a mainstream kind of level has that instantaneous feeling when you first hear it. It's hard to recreate that, and it's hard to know when you're creating that for what person and where to market it to. You know, there's a lot of levels that comes down to it. But when it all comes down to it too, who am I to be a gatekeeper for anybody on this platform? I'm smaller than pretty much everybody on this platform at this point, as evident by this subscribed and not subscribed percentage. I can't fathom fame on someone like Crypt's level. Crypt literally has 1 million subs. You understand what I'm saying? Like, that's a lot of people to try to make right. Like, I work at Rite Aid. I come home and I make videos where I don't even script and just try to speak my mind on something that I'm hope I'm educated on, straight up. So even though I feel ready for that kind of thing, I just know I'm speaking from the outside looking in for the most part. And the only real parallels that we might have is the fact that we both create the same kind of music. Like, I don't even know somebody directly at that kind of level of fame either, you know what I'm saying? Like, I guess maybe the person whom has the most following that I've met in person, as that he's at least aware of who I am as a human, is Samad Savage, who was put on by Crypt, right? And so you could see where maybe another moral dilemma comes into me as far as having bias, because, and I just want to be explicit about this out front, is that obviously Crypt had a large part in helping Samad gain a YouTube following. Now, Samad has done so much on his own to just make incredible music and incredibly different music and just get on scenes already, right? Like, it took an incredible amount of effort from Samad just to get to Crypt's door. But when he got to Crypt's door, Crypt really helped, like 1000%. And I got to see that real time because I've been aware of Samad and the way that he's been running stuff in my home state for the better part of the last couple years, as far as the underground scene goes. And now he's like really running it, you know, if you ask me. Between him and Chris Patrick, as far as New Jersey is concerned in my eyes, as far as like who is actually running the underground scene where I'm from. But Samad is such a different person, right? And for Crypt to share his platform with someone like Samad is so nice of Crypt, right? There's many men who do not share their platform in the way that Crypt shares his platform. I've not seen another YouTuber, period, not just in the rap lane, just period, who is so willing to help put people on and give people a platform. Now, sometimes that could be detrimental, right? Because the more people you let in, is there controversy under individual people, yada yada yada. There's a risk in doing what Crypt does. And also, clearly it creates people who are salty on the platform, as he talks a lot about it in his music. For the most part, I think Crypt uses his platform for good, and that's pretty inarguable, you know? And I think that whether you like or dislike his music, you need to acknowledge that Crypt is a good enough guy to share his spotlight. He falls into a lane though of content for me, other than the ciphers, which is why I think maybe they're so successful, of this reaction video trap, right? I see Screw fall in this trap. I've seen many men, not to use the same 50 Cent phrase, but I've been listening to that album a lot. But I've seen many men get stuck in that trap of, I need to make reaction videos just to get content. Now, a reaction video can be good content, but it's when you're titling it after the video and it's like rapper reacts, or like, the hope is that with branding, you are able to branch out from that kind of content eventually. But as Crypt grows, I will say maybe I'm looking for his content to develop a little bit more on the platform. As far as having just different content to watch from him, right? Like, I feel like I've seen him react to every video on this platform, and I've gotten an idea for how he feels about music already, which is what reaction videos do, right? You grow your audience from them being able to see how you feel about stuff, you know? And I think now Crypt has grown his audience to 1 million subscribers just from telling them how he feels about stuff and making music and making ciphers. The ciphers, I feel like, are evergreen, right? Like, there's an evergreen topics, and then there's momentary topics and topical topics. I think ciphers are evergreen. As long as Crypt is alive, he can make a YouTube cipher and it will get views. Straight up. Because people like his taste enough off of seeing his reaction videos to trust when he co-signs all these people and puts together a cipher, and then he helps all those artists grow because all those people do trust his opinion and do end up liking a lot of the artists that he puts on. You see how that works for someone like Joey Nato, for someone like Samad Savage. The benefit for Crypt in that even too is getting to see all the stems of what those artists are working on, you know? He literally gets to see how they make music. Joey Nato gets to see the same thing. So I think the two of them are going to continue to grow pretty exponentially because they've gotten to see how 30 people plus how they make music. Crypt is probably benefiting tremendously from being able to see how all these artists work, is my point. I think in the long run that's going to do a lot for Crypt's longevity, and again, I said it in the Quadeca video, I think anybody can write a hit song, straight up. There's a lot of marketing that goes into a hit song, there's a lot of energy that goes into a hit song. It really is, it's not hard to make one sometimes, but it is hard to have a song do well sometimes, and sometimes you don't get to choose the ones that do well. You're just making music and then they do well, and then you feel like you gotta match that a little bit, right? But my point with all the prior and how good Crypt has been for organic growth for artists, I don't think Crypt is ever going to fall off once he reaches that stage. I'm going to break down, obviously, his first project and his second project. For Quadeca, I had a little bit more to critique as far as a discography, so it was a pretty condensed 25-minute video. This one, I'm just going to do Tales from the Crypt and then Buried Alive since it just came out. I've listened to both. I have some notes on both. Again, I only want to be helpful, especially with Crypt. I feel like he talks a lot about how he receives criticism, right? And I'm trying to dance around being as helpful as I can with it and never just trying to be like that this just sucks and you can't improve it ever. Because I've been making music for a long time, again, I said it in the Quadeca video too, and I'm trying to make music because I've been trying to make music for a few years now. I know how I want to receive criticism, so I'm trying to give that criticism to people that they can put that energy into making it better, and how it could have made it better for maybe my ears. Do they have to listen to every single criticism I have? Absolutely not. Am I gonna give it? Yeah, I think it's healthy. Right out the gate, I'm gonna be a little harsh on Tales from the Crypt. I never feel like any of what Crypt writes about is lacking in content matter. There's always content matter in what he speaks. In the same way that I critique Quadeca, I would maybe prefer a little bit more subtlety with how it's presented, honestly, most of the time, as opposed to kind of just handing me, like, instead of handing me what you're saying, I want to be able to come to my own conclusion. For me, when I write stuff, I want audiences to come to their own conclusions, not just 100% hear what I say and just be like, yes, I agree, yes, I disagree. And sometimes that's important, right? That's a different style of writing. But I think when you rely on direct messaging as opposed to indirect messaging in music, that maybe your project's run times can run a little long, especially if you're making 3-minute tracks, 4-minute tracks, you know? And I think in turn, this project runs just slightly stereotypical to me, especially with the artwork and how the instrumentation and everything feels presented. And again, I'm critiquing old music, right? He's obviously, a little bit of a spoiler alert, he's obviously improved from this in my eyes, but I do want to see what's here and say why I think stuff doesn't or does work. To me, there's occasionally corny bars that take me a little bit out of his performance, especially again when the runtime is so long. I feel like sometimes you could just chop those third verses, you know? A little bit of inexperience shows with when he tries to stretch words a little bit past the flow that works from time to time. Now, he doesn't do that all the time, and as again, this is something that I feel like he improves on later in his discography, but you do see those moments where maybe he's just trying to fit wording instead of letting you rock with the beat, you know? Some lines for me only really tend to work a maximum 2 ways, you know? Like I'm saying, like as far as handing it to me. I feel like sometimes there's double entendres, but for the most part, he's just telling you how he feels. And just for me, unless I'm directly relating to the content matter, it's cool to know how you feel, but unless you're giving me the performance that helps me emote how you feel, like you're literally making me feel how you feel, or you are allowing me to relate to something that you feel, telling me about how you feel, but in the same way you could be telling me about how something I feel, right? A lot of mainstream artists leave rap lyrics up to interpretation, and that's why they grow so much. They're not just being upfront necessarily, they're indirect with how they say it, because then if you don't directly feel that way, then maybe their performance makes you feel that way, or maybe the way that they wrote it makes you feel that way about something else in your life. And all those layers are up to interpretation, but it also leaves the same emotion conveyed that the artist is trying to convey. Some songs with looser concepts on this project seem randomly interplaced to me. Like if he's trying to write like a quote-unquote hit song, it feels weirdly placed as far as the runtime is concerned, and it doesn't help that the flow of the project kind of gets halted, right? Like if he's trying to do one thing, cool, but it seems like he's trying to do both things, but he doesn't quite know where to do them. It's gonna be real slow and orchestral, right? And like telling you how I feel, and then out of nowhere it's like a futuristic banger. Actually, you know what? I take that back, because the futuristic transition from the track prior was actually like was good. That was the only time on the project that I was like, yo, that was actually kind of funny, because it was such a deep, serious song that transitions into a futuristic feature. I would prefer to see him have gone just that one direction, not feel like he has to place the hit songs on there. Just release a music video for the hit song and just leave it on there, keep it a single, you know, like don't put it on Tales from the Crypt, in my opinion, because I think a lot of his audience likes when he's being sincere and honest on a record and straightforward. So it feels weird to have a hit songs just kind of like here and there, unless you're gonna make them fit the vibe of the project. It's just, to me, they didn't. Now, as far as his flow is concerned, Crypt obviously gets the fast rapper criticism, and to me, it's not so much fast rap as it is systematic. I like how systematic it can be at times, right? Like he is so precise about it, and he clearly thinks a lot about it. But without something instrumentally to juxtapose what he's saying, especially on Tales from the Crypt, I feel like sometimes the messaging is one of two things. It's either laid there with no way to interpret it, or it's a little lost in the sauce, and it's just sounding like a similar track that I've already heard from him or from somebody else. And the runtimes of the tracks, again, in my opinion, could have been cut down to avoid some filler here and there, to me. You don't have to ever throw away music. You could just always try to fit it somewhere else, is my view. But if it doesn't work on something, I think you just need to be honest and say it's filler. And that's something I struggled with for a really long time too, right? Like for most of 2017, in my early years of writing music, I just would like do these things, which is why I'm able to signal it and see when it's happening, in my opinion at least. But this again, Tales from the Crypt doesn't really get him out of that shadow of artists whom he makes similar music to, or especially stylistically. Now, I never doubt that Crypt is talking about something real or of substance, and that sets him apart, and how precise he is sets him apart, but he still kind of falls into this subgenre. Now, and again, he has some of the best enunciation I've ever heard on a record, period. I just feel like he fails to create his own lane from other YouTubers on this project. But I think, again, from seeing him as a human being and seeing what he's done with his platform, don't mind all these things being here. I'm not going to be like, hey, he doesn't deserve a spot, he sucks. That's not my job. I'm trying to talk about what works, what doesn't work. By the way, since we were talking about Sheesh before, it's really dope energy wise. I would love to hear more of that from Crypt. I don't feel like I ever really do hear that from Crypt ever on this record, other than here, you know? Like it feels like he had a fire under him on that record that maybe he felt a little uncomfortable on a record for the rest of it. And that happens with new rappers, right? You get more and more comfortable the more you do it. I made 48 songs last year. Pretty much from the first song to the last song, you could see how much more comfortable I got, straight up. And from what I'm making now, I am light years more comfortable on a record, right? That just happens. The more you make music, you're gonna get better at doing that. It just feels like in 2019, Crypt is a little early on in the process. Again, always content matter. I don't think his writing ever typically lacks, other than maybe it's handed to you sometimes. But when it's handed to you, it's good sometimes. Like there's good ways to hand it to me and bad ways to hand it to me, you know? Presentations, everything. Overall, like I said, it's great content matter, but I would prefer more subtlety with how things are presented, so as to allow the audience to come to their own conclusions and less focus on literal storytelling. I appreciate how much the content of the music matters to him, but I think without directly relating to it, I don't find myself stunned with the emotion being presented through the entire project. Like, because I've not experienced the same exact thing, I'm not like drawn aback by the emotion. I'm more so trying to find how I would relate to it. Whereas maybe if his performance was a little bit more energetic, I could just be relating to how he feels based on how he's telling me he feels, not like verbally, you know, not literally verbally. I'll put my favorite tracks again and my least favorite track like I did with the Quadeca reviews. I'll put that straight up stealing the needle drop, but I would give Tales from the Crypt a light to decent 4. Now again, that's harsh, and again 5 being like met expectations in a way, right? Anything above a 5 is a positive review. So this is a slightly negative review. At no point do I feel like Crypt isn't capable of more the more he gets comfortable. Now to move on to his most recent project, Buried Alive, he starts out with better storytelling and better, like he's still matter of fact on this intro, but with how matter of fact he is, he got better with articulating it. You know, like his writing improved on the intro of this track out the get-go. Crypt put in time and effort into how he writes over Tales from the Crypt to Buried Alive. I think it was around 2 years of time, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I mean, I don't know when around 2019 Tales from the Crypt came out. I'm a fake fan, but it's still so much better than it was before, right? I just wanted to mention that. I'll go track by track in a little bit, and I'm just going to talk about how I overall feel about the project, and then I'll go track by track. But I just needed to acknowledge that Crypt really improved his writing from 2019. There's flashes of this talented writing, and the intro just out the get-go proves that he has done that. Now, sometimes I see him fall back, but drastically good writing improvements. Now, I prefer the Buried Alive theme to the original Tales from the Crypt theme. It seems like there was more artistic direction with how he feels, a little less literal. I feel like Tales from the Crypt, like I get it, but Buried Alive is like, oh, so there's a theme with how he's feeling, you know? That's important for a mainstream artist, because again, that's a direct thematic that I can relate to. It's not just you, the human being. It's, oh, maybe I feel buried alive too sometimes. You know, this runs a little stereotypically edgy from time to time and can sound like, it sounds a little bit like the stuff he's being directly criticized for, right? And Crypt is someone who's very vocal about how people criticize his music, and in all fairness, I don't care. You'd say however you want on a record, in my opinion. I don't think there is any rules. I feel like sometimes he doesn't divvy from that lane that people criticize him for. At the end of the day, you could have people who directly criticize you, like there's good criticism and bad criticism, right? Again, what I'm trying to do here is what I view as constructive criticism. There's people who are just like, oh, you're edgy and you suck, right? That's not what I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be like, Tales from the Crypt came off a little basic, right? As far as the theme went, you know, like exactly like I said before. This, it does still run a little edgy as far as imagery and like that's Crypt, like the dark horror stuff, but that's just not really for me either, you know what I mean? I don't hate that kind of stuff, but I feel like it takes a lot for me to really like it. I just feel like if you're directly trying to prove some people wrong, you do have to do what they think sometimes. I feel like sometimes down to the feature artist, he is doing stuff that he is directly criticized for. Now, there's times where he does that and proves you wrong, but there's also times where he does that and can prove them right. And it's just about cleanup, right? You just got to clean that shit up, but I think there are moments of this on this record. Now, again, that dark content doesn't really do too much for me, and just straight up, like, I just want to be transparent about how I feel, and that's not just Crypt's fault, that's like everywhere. And I like that the album sounds dark, like it makes sense for a Crypt record to sound dark, right? Like that's why I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I know what works and what doesn't work, I feel like. While it's meant to sound dark, I prefer the darker themes over like less orchestral and thematic instrumentals. Like I feel like a lot of these instrumentals run really like long, and like I understand you're trying to story tell, so you want to have very live instrumentals and stuff like that, and they run very, again, orchestral almost. But when you're trying to be so thematic all the time, it's a lot to absorb for me, especially in a couple listens. And with how literal he can be from time to time, I just think you need to be conscious of how much you make one type of record on a 13-track album, right? You can either make all one kind of record and make them all sound different in some fashion, or a whole bunch of different kind of things that all transition well into each other, in my opinion, right? From time to time, especially as hit songs, again, quote unquote, like the more energetic Crypt pops up, it works more than it did in Tales from the Crypt. It still feels outplaced. Can run a little similar to each other, especially when you go bar for bar to find like context and content. I feel like a lot of what he's talking about on those hype songs is criticism, and I think there's other ways to use hype emotion other than just be like, fuck all my haters, you know? Now, also, I just want to talk about on this before I go track for track. Apparently, every white rapper on YouTube learned how to sing this year. Quadeca really learned how to sing this year, and Crypt really learned how to sing this year. Over more unique instrumentation, I really find myself loving Crypt's energy, but again, over the more orchestral and dynamic songs, I find he can struggle to maintain a performance level, especially over the more stripped instrumentation where it's just his voice. You know, if it's gonna be just your voice, this is something I've discovered recently. You really need to feel it. You know, you really need to feel yourself. And I feel like sometimes Crypt can still feel a little uncomfortable making music from time to time. And I feel like sometimes he can maybe be harping on instances that anger him more than make him feel buried alive. Like, I understand the frustration in being buried alive. There's got to be an aspect peaceful to it. Like, if you've been buried alive long enough, you have to become content at some point, I'm assuming. I feel like he just might be harping on instances, again, that kind of anger and frustrate him, as opposed to maybe having a more spread of emotion. Now, again, these track runtimes are better too than the original Tales from the Crypt. I think the original Tales from the Crypt, the track runtimes were too long, straight up. A lot of the songs run a little long here, but no matter how much layering you do or how much you do for the active listener, sometimes the hooks can run dry when you hear it that much, you know? So I just think sometimes, again, you just gotta chop the third verse, you just gotta put it somewhere else. I don't want anything that's gonna stop me from listening to this thing front to back. Now, to go track for track here, I think the intro is really incredibly done. Great storytelling. I was kind of already talking about it before, but like, I mean, I'll pull up some of the lyrics. Hold on, that's what I'll do while I'm doing this. I feel like sometimes on the intro, right, like he could do some stuff where the slant rhyme, he's just still not comfortable saying. I feel like you just gotta own a slant rhyme, right? Like that times a thousand. Like, I just feel like you gotta own it, not like try to finesse it sometimes. And the energy, right? Like, I'm so glad the intro instrumentation is so stripped, but he brings the energy over the stripped instrumental that you need over stripped instrumentation. And he does not do this the way that he does it on Tales from the Crypt. Tales from the Crypt 2 being what the intro is called, it's literally the progression of that. That's awesome. And he's very honest with how his life is. This is an instance where direct storytelling really works for me, because I feel how he feels even if I don't directly relate to how he feels. There are instances where I directly relate to how he feels and that energy adds to it, right? That's perfect. That's exactly what you want. And he talks about the struggle of making music, right? And the struggle of how he, again, it takes criticism. I feel like I'm gonna say a lot of those criticisms, but I just want to really break it down. I think it's really hard to make everybody happy. And for me, I sat back from 2017 until 2020 and was like, I'm not gonna make any music. I'm just gonna store all my shit. And I was at a low point because I just had 2 songs stolen from me that did really well because I was just negligent, right? After that happened, I kind of reached this. I was living in Ohio, not talking to very many people. I was in a state whom I knew nobody and met like maybe 4 or 5 people whom I spoke to and was just doing what I had to do. If you ask me, I came to this recent understanding and just kind of released all the music that was in my vault, right? Like, I just kind of was like, F it, why am I holding on to these songs, and just put them all out. I didn't promote them, and now I'm sitting back and making an album and really perfecting it. I just needed to get over that anxiety of, when do I release this thing? How do I release this thing? Because anxiety is something I struggle with a lot in my life. Over time, I really didn't take the criticism as seriously. It's hard when you're putting so much of your energy into it. It doesn't matter unless you did it for you. And to talk about how much the criticism hurts him kind of hurts me, because I feel like there's a lot of people that support Crypt and like Crypt, but again, that's just an example of how maybe the energy that he brought to this track really adds to helping me relate to how he feels. Like, it directly brought me to an instance in my life. Of no offense to Crypt, he follows that up, and I know this is a single that people like, but Call It Quits to me like really lacks. It's just not my type of song. There's some content matter to me, but I don't love the presentation or the instrumentation at all, or the hook. I do not like the hook. It just runs like something I'd hear in like Madden 04. It's interesting to hear a rapper do this now, but it's just not for me at all. Jelly Roll had the best verse in the whole thing. Borderline hated Adam Calhoun's verse. Crypt's okay on it. I do not like this song. Just straight up, that's not my kind of song. Really impresses me with Tales from the Crypt, and then really disappoints me in Call It Quits, right? Let me just tell you, I was literally taken aback and stunned by I Won't Miss You. This sounds to me like a country hip-hop fusion that like makes more sense than Old Town Road in a way. It's a more authentic fusion of country hip-hop. It's got a great runtime. It doesn't overstay a welcome. It makes me want to return to it as opposed to feeling like I've already heard all it had to offer through one listen. It's really good. And again, I didn't love Crypt overstripped instrumentation in the past. Now I really like it. I don't know what it is. He just really got good at it. I guess every white YouTube rapper learned how to sing. I didn't know that was the thing that everybody was doing. I'm sorry. This is crazy. Like, this is something that I would return to from Crypt. And again, that's something a lot of YouTube rap for me wasn't returnable past a music video. Whereas now I could find myself putting some YouTube rap in playlists. Like, it's not that far out of my brain. Especially this song, I could see getting put in playlists, you know? But like, the raw emotion in the singing really works. And he follows up I Won't Miss You to me with a meh song in Let 'Em Talk. That was just something I've heard before from Crypt for sure. I just feel like albums are an opportunity to show a bunch of new stuff, and I feel like sometimes Crypt again relies on some of the stuff that he knows will work. That's not again his fault. Maybe it's not what he wants to make. I gotta go get ice. I got the second shot. My arm is fucking killing me. 1 second. I feel like Let 'Em Talk was just weirdly placed. I know it's a Screwface diss, according to Genius at least. I don't hate that there's friction between them as far as an entertainment perspective. That's obviously pretty entertaining. A diss battle back and forth would be pretty interesting, obviously. I did notice that there was mild friction at least between Screw and Crypt as of at least recently. I feel like the subliminals aren't hitting super hard as an outsider to the friction. I just again noticed a little bit of friction. I don't know where it stems from, and I'm sure there's truth in his takes, but it just feels a little surface level subliminal to me, so it runs a little bit strange to put on like an album. I like how Gone came on it, honestly. I don't love a lot of Gone, no offense to Luke Gone, but I really like how he came on this record. I like the flow, the rhyme scheme way more than the performance, but it was good, you know, like I'm not gonna hate it. It's just mid, you know, it's just like a mid Crypt song that has some subliminals that I don't understand. And then to follow up that mid track to me is I Don't Wanna is a little long for me. I think it runs a little typically dark, especially the instrumental. Flow just doesn't seem like anything new, unfortunately. Again, to me, is how you present the information is just as important as the information itself sometimes. So again, there's content. How he's presenting it to me just isn't the way that I want him to present it. I feel like he's handing me the meaning as opposed to letting me find it, which for me, part of the fun of music is being able to identify what they're meaning. You know, I don't want to just know all the time. The way that he's articulating loss works, but again, it's just the presentation as far as the instrumental and the presentation as far as maybe the energy is something I feel like I've heard before, or something I feel like runs a little stereotypical in the fact that he's handing me the meaning. And the track runtime is too long, by the way. Now, Rappers Do Not Like Me, I actually think is a well-placed breakup pace the project. He didn't do that well in Tales from the Crypt, but I feel like this actually helps break up the project a little bit. I know Let 'Em Talk does that, but I didn't like Let 'Em Talk. I would have preferred this maybe placed where Let 'Em Talk was, and it might have done more for me, but I just feel like this is a better fast rap. This is just like a better placed type song to break up the project, and it's one of those like longer songs that carries the full way through, right? It's like a good futuristic feature. This is something that I could listen to the whole 3 minutes of. Again, when it's shorter, like the 2 minutes 27 intro, 2 minute 28, I Won't Miss You. Those were what was doing the most for me, whereas this one's around 3 minutes now, and he's carrying a little bit more of a runtime to me, but it has a feature. And again, like the futuristic feature, I think futuristic did well. The chorus is a little samey to me to something I've heard before. It's a little basic of a melody. Like the way that he's presenting it, I get it, but it's just, it doesn't seem like anything new for me. But yeah, Rappers Do Not Like Me, still a good moment, even though the hook for me is a little basic. And then you go right into Who You Know, which for me is a better application. Good fast rap, right? Like this is fast rap that I think really works, especially over this like really unique instrumentation, and it just flows really well with the aesthetic of Crypt. This is one of those songs that makes the most sense to me, and I want him to do more of this. Other than like that synth organ being far too loud in the mix, like that like low, that whole thing is peaking in the mix, but this is peak rapping from Crypt in my opinion on the record. Like this really works, and it's different. This is like a darker aesthetic that I like, and I think again this is one of those like it has like hype song content matter, but it's good. Like it's really different and good. Obviously the instrumentation on something like Voicemail is really like sounds really mainstream. I haven't thought about Chris Webby since maybe Homegrown. I guess Webster's Lab was a thing, but it like he has not really been mainstream, and his like peak popularity is pretty much like There Goes the Neighborhood, I feel like thus far. Now he could surprise me in the future, but it feels like maybe that was his moment. Crypt puts himself well above Chris Webby by putting the two of them together. To me, it just feels weird that this would be like a sick feature for a project, right? Like to me, Crypt's already ahead of this. I feel like most of the people hyped about this track are Crypt fans. Like I don't think Chris Webby's bringing you too many more clicks is what I'm getting at. And so to me, I feel like it'd be more interesting for Crypt, someone known to be getting YouTube rappers on a platform, right? Like why doesn't he get more up and coming rappers on his project? I understand wanting to maybe separate what you do for people and what you'd make for yourself, and trying to like grow and do whatever you gotta do. Yeah, I just to me, I don't understand. I don't think picking up a fallen soldier, I'll call it, like a former popular rapper, it just feels like a weird person when he could easily reach out to someone who maybe is young and coming up, and it'd probably do the same, you know, and honestly might get you a little bit more attention from like an up and coming fan base. Like I don't feel like this feature surprises me, you know. Someone like KSI getting Polo G on a track surprises me, whereas like Crypt getting Chris Webby is like, oh well, you kind of already more popular than Chris Webby, yo. Maybe not like on the streets, but you're pretty poppin'. in comparison. Only difference is Chris Webby will get picked up by like Double XL from time to time, maybe. But you just pay for those, you know? It's just they'll answer Chris Webby because they know Chris Webby and they're old heads. Yeah, to me, really, Jelly Roll was the only feature that really stood out to me as far as like Crypt, as far as getting like a different kind of artist who seems like on a level above Crypt as far as like cloudage, I suppose. The song itself is fine. It's interesting enough, I guess. The production's cool, and then when the guitar comes in is when it feels maybe most different it ever does, but it just feels like a flow I've heard from Crypt before, and the singing just doesn't stun me as much as it did on like I Won't Miss You, for instance. Like the energy. Now, Bad Friend, I understand the messaging. Again, it just feels a little handed to me. I don't love Crypt over the more orchestral instrumentals. I just prefer maybe a more energetic and emotional performance too. Content is good. Again, I'm never gonna knock him for that, and I haven't knocked him for that on this project yet because I think it is always there. If I didn't feel like it was there, I'd call him out for it, but I understand that you're making different kinds of songs, right? You're making hype songs and you're making serious songs. I'm not gonna be like, oh, well, your hype song about rappers not liking you doesn't have any content. I'm like, I get it. When the songs are meant to have content, they have content. The flow as far as the song itself is carrying itself good too. It just feels like a quote unquote deep song, you know? It just feels like without me directly relating to the content matter, I don't find it doing it too much for me, just on a performance level. It's hard for me to say this because I'm sure it was really hard to create. It seems like it was something that he was very serious about, and I'm sure this was something that was hard to create, but I just feel like a raise in energy that he brought on the back half of this is something that I would have preferred for maybe the entirety of the track, because I think without directly relating to the content matter, again, I found myself more tuning into the energy when it was increased and like tuning into what he was saying and relating to what he was saying when the energy increased, as opposed to finding myself relating to just the emotion and not absorbing the content matter as much. At that moment, I found myself relating to the emotion and not just absorbing the content matter, you know? Like, I feel like that does more for an active listener than any writing you can do. And again, that just comes with more comfortability. Will he inevitably get there? Yes. The more he keeps making music, and it seems like he's going to be able to keep making music for a pretty long time, he will inevitably get there, I'm sure. But it's just, it doesn't do it for me here yet. Moving on to Is It True? So to me, Is It True is a good runtime, honestly, but other than the content matter being, again, something that doesn't directly relate to me or something I don't directly relate to, I don't find myself really finding a reason to return to the track. I like the energy increase here, right? It's a more orchestral dark production, which I don't like, but I feel like the increase in energy makes more sense here than it did earlier. Like, I wish this energy shows up more, right? Like, the performance is better here, but I just do not like the instrumentation. It's really basic instrumentation. And again, I don't directly relate to the content matter. I feel the anger and I feel the frustration. Like, his performance is great, but the production is basic. I just wanted it to be more chaotic. But I wish this energy was on that track that I was just criticizing before, Bad Friend, because again, I feel like it would have been more relatable. And again, this is kind of starting a slow stretch for me for Crypt. The last 3 songs I was not really a huge fan of. I don't hate them by all means, but I don't find myself having reason to return to them too much, as opposed to maybe someone else who's like really making waves in the mainstream, you know, which is again most of YouTube's competition, like the tech bar. Other than that, nothing really stands out to me too much. It's just, I feel like Crypt's tone is one that I've heard before. What he's saying is gonna get a little lost in the sauce, even though I like what he's saying. Again, the tech flex, really hard, like Cardi B's Areolas bar, funny. But again, that loud double, the deep doubles were way too loud again. I don't know what it is about the deeper low end. The low end has been way too high on a lot of this record as far as mix is concerned. The song feels a little weird structurally too, right? It just feels like a little slapped together. It feels like the fast stuff kind of comes out of nowhere to me. I understand rapping fast, but I feel like it could be implemented better than kind of like, especially with how slow the hook is, it feels weird juxtaposed. It feels like Crypt tried to do everything he could do in one track, but I feel like it was a little loose. They were good writing moments for sure. On a performance level, it just felt a little like he pieced a couple different songs together. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work, but I feel like again, I used to do that. I feel like when I would put older lyrics to a different beat, you just gotta be really honest with yourself when it works, 'cause I feel like people will tell you it works all the time. Bro, my right arm was such a mistake. All right, moving on to There For You with Atlas. This is kind of the last song I didn't like on this stretch. I feel like Crypt literally carries the back half of this record completely fine. I feel like if this was a 1, 2, 3, it's like a 7-track EP, this was incredible. That's neither here nor there. Atlas has a great voice. I like him and Crypt together again. The instrumentation here runs a little basic to me. This shit would get picked up by our radio. Shades of Us got picked up, and I did not like Shades of Us at all. With the right rollout and the right music video, this shit's everywhere, but I just don't like it. It's not for me. It's just a style song I've heard too much at this point in my life. It's just not the type of music I listen to. Atlas murdered that hook, and it's good content matter, and like calling rap his love life riff, I think, right? Isn't that the whole meaning? It's not a reason it's not something I'd return to. As far as like mixing stuff too, that tape recorder, I'm getting a little sick of hearing at this point in the record. I feel like if it was 7 tracks, I wouldn't have minded it. 15 tracks, I'm getting a little sick of it. For maybe something a little different, or maybe if it expanded throughout the record. If I'm listening to this thing front to back, it gets a little annoying to hear the tick. And I'd get the idea if you spliced it occasionally from time to time, you know, you don't have to do it on every record, but it feels like it's happening on every record. If it's not, I'm sorry, but it feels like it is. And again, that kind of ends the slow stretch of the project for me. I think the next 3 songs are literally like great, no questions asked. Rapping from the closet, or rapping in my closet rather, again, has the production energy I think Crypt really works his best in. Similar to like Who You Know, I feel like the low end is still far too high, and I just feel like when that back like low end stuff is too high, it just takes me out of the track when it happens. Other than that, I just feel like his content matter hasn't really dipped. I never really doubt that Crypt is telling the truth on a record. He seems very transparent. I think this is a great example of good Crypt, good fast rap. Sundays with Grandma again is another country rap fusion in a way. I don't know if is it even really rap? I feel like it's all singing. No, it's all singing. This is another country moment on the record that I feel like really works, and I feel like Crypt kind of dances around doing that kind of style of music when I feel like he could really focus on that style of music and make something really, really different. Like something dark and then something country makes a whole lot of sense. I feel like a lot of, I mean, maybe not horrorcore is a strong word, but a lot of horror content comes from country, like the Devil Down in Georgia. Like there's a lot of horror-esque themes in country music that you could express on, and I feel like with the right instrumentation and the right sound, like I feel like he did that a little bit on Who You Know. Like that was really unique instrumentation. I feel like he's trickling this idea of creating a whole new art form, and he just doesn't fully come out with it on this project. Like it can run a little long. There's some strange mixing for Sundays with Grandma, but this is a highlight for me. Like I want more of this style stuff, more of this style singing, and then maybe like horror mixed with country. That would work. I think light years better than relying too heavy on those kind of hype tracks and making like Who You Know the style hype tracks that I want to hear. Buried Alive to me is like a more rap centric country rap fusion too. Sundays with Grandma is just a country song basically. I don't think it's even rap. You know, it's a little Nickelbacky in a way. Works really well, and it closes out the album really well, Buried Alive. It's one of those moments where it's like almost a country style hook with rap, and it just works. He doesn't do this all the time on the record, but I feel like this works the most out of anything on the record as far as a country rap fusion, other than maybe like I Won't Miss You, but this is great. So yeah, I mean, to wrap up my opinions, I mean, as a whole, I don't think this is the project that breaks Crypt out of the box of YouTube, right? I don't think this really proves a lot of those people who criticize his music wrong. I feel like it shows a lot of flashes of the ability to do that eventually, if not having already done that from time to time on this record. I think the more comfortable he gets making music on both a performance and a production level, that being Joey Nato, I think did a lot of production on this. Once those two things kind of come into place and he finds a little bit more of a unique way to present his information, and the more comfortable he gets, I feel like the more he'll diversify himself from the crowd of literally everyone and their mother wanting to be a rapper, other than the cyphers, which I feel like did that for him. I just feel like if you need to be a mainstream rapper, you need to do it on your music. You can't prove it to other people by organizing music. That's how you become a brand. Crypt's effectively become a brand. You also kind of need to establish the music if you're trying to prove that you know something, you know? That's a hard pill I had to swallow as well, and I'm still trying to figure out. While he's great at what he's doing, especially on flashes where he does something new, I feel like when I'm relying on just audio, there's not a whole lot of disrupting Crypt from the crowd. I feel like his messaging can get a little lost in that crowd as well, because there's a lot of people who have a lot of stuff to say in this world too. And Crypt has a lot of real sincere stories and real troubles that, again, according to him, he's not even fully delving into yet. And that'll eventually come with time, and he should wait until he's more comfortable to do so for sure, because that's something I'm doing as well. I think Crypt does more to separate himself here from the pack of other artists, but ultimately he falls back to some tendencies rather than trying to find something new like how he did from time to time. So is Crypt better than like the Gons and like separating himself from, like, if we're looking within that genre of YouTube rap? I think so. Through this, he's pretty much transcended just being a fast rapper. You know, if people are gonna criticize him for that, he's sung twice on this record and it's worked, like at least. I still feel like some of his messaging can get a little lost in the sauce. I feel like the same thing happens to Dax. I think because Dax Dax is such a literal rapper, but I'll get into Dax at another moment in time too. Yeah, I just wish he didn't fall back on some tendencies. Like, I really like Buried Alive, I Won't Miss You, Who You know what I mean? Like, moments where it felt really new and unique, especially the Digging Your Own Grave, and hearing it at the end of every record. I understand the theme, but it gets a little annoying to hear it all the time. I would have preferred that style music in maybe like a tight 10 of that unique fusion, you know? Like I said, maybe there's, I thought there were 7 tracks that like really work. If he made that a tight 10 and maybe let a little bit of like the Chris Webby and some stuff that I was on the fence about like in there, I feel like all of a sudden this is something I can listen to front to back. This stuff is just a little bit of music that I wouldn't return to just straight up. That's just how it is for me. I'm sorry. There's stuff holding me back from returning to anything past those 7 tracks that I mentioned. I feel like, again, the runtime of a project is important too, and I feel like sometimes 15 songs is just a little long. I know Chris Brown can make 48 or whatever he wants to do. I mean, I tried to separate my 48 into different EPs, so I guess I'm guilty too. But for the most part, Crypt does some stuff here to diversify himself from the crowd. When he stops relying on certain tendencies, I feel like all of a sudden he's gonna have this whole different floodgate of people interested in his music. Again, everything that I mentioned, I feel like is new sounding. Like I've something I haven't heard before, and that's not something I'd say about pretty much anything on Tales from the Crypt. So he's created something new now. It happens eventually with every artist. I just want him to really delve into that new sound and maybe make something really tight, not a long run time. Just see how that does. Because that shit could be everywhere. And I think the fusion of like fast rap and country music will have a large carryover audience as well, in my opinion. It's weird that I liked a lot of the stripped instrumental here, where I didn't maybe like it on a lot of Tales from the Crypt. So Crypt's improved. I really am glad to see that Crypt's improved, and I'm excited to see him continue to improve and continue to grow his platform. All that being said, I'm going to give Buried Alive like a decent to strong 6 out of 10. To answer the overall question now, I suppose, this is a long video, I know. Thank God chapters exist. So acknowledge the initial question, right? Because I've been trying to be really positive in the same way that I was with Quadeca. Because again, I don't think anybody's incapable of this task. I just think it comes down to certain stuff that holds people back, and it comes down to identifying it, right? Like I'm trying to identify the stuff that holds me back. I'm guilty of things through my own experiences, assess what might be happening with other people and how I feel about the stuff that they're presenting from the perspective of someone who does the same thing. It's like more peer-to-peer to me than it is anything else. Who are you? Why are you? And why now? The who are you? I know he's from the South. I don't know where particularly in the South. I want to say Kentucky. I don't know if Kentucky's even the South. I couldn't find too much information on Crypt. Every time I tried to Google him, I ended up with Crypt the War Child. So I'm going off of like a WikiTube. From what I understand, Crypt gained a lot of his following from rapping at a faster speed, like Eminem, but at 200 times speed, and just showing his pure technical ability. I've seen that with YouTube and the platform of YouTube with people like George Watsky. I've seen that with people like Mac Lethal. So I'm no stranger to that type of content. Getting on KSI's Dissimulation and that whole KSI radar got him a huge, bigger burst of an audience. People that were just interested in his actual music in a similar way that it happened with Quadeca. And Crypt used that and flipped it into ciphers, showcasing his musical taste. That has been the most successful thing on his channel, I think, other than the fact that those people that like his ciphers also like his individual music. He's a human who shares his platform. He's a human with good technical ability and a fan base for his technical ability. And he's a rapper who is primarily gaining an audience on YouTube through reaction videos at the moment, other than through his music and ciphers. From what I understand, Crypt doesn't live too much of a gangster, stereotypical hip-hop lifestyle, but he has lived hardships in which I feel like hip-hop on its core foundation is about overcoming poor situations, and I feel like at no point does Crypt's who he is affect his ability to storytell and what he's saying in hip-hop, and it's staying in hip-hop and being allowed in hip-hop. There's some white rappers who talk about stuff that probably shouldn't be allowed in hip-hop. I don't think Crypt falls in that line, though he might follow some of the tropes that those artists have done as far as creative direction, as far as ability, etc. As far as why are you, Crypt has done an excellent job of answering that question through both of these projects, no matter what score I've given him on both of them. I think Crypt has effectively, through all of his content, told me about why he is who he is, what makes him tick, what makes him not tick. That was something that I was missing from Quadeca, and that was the biggest thing that I maybe put that was blocking Quadeca from being in the mainstream, and I feel like I got some of that from Quadeca, but I didn't get all of what I needed. Whereas Crypt, I'm getting a whole lot of information on what I need, but I'm not 100% loving the presentation, whether it be just a little bit of straightforward writing or a little bit of straightforward production. I would prefer more experimentation in Crypt's discography. To answer the why now, does he have the audience pull? Absolutely. Does he have the writing ability? I'd say he teeters on the fence of checking that box, but at the moment I feel like he's shown flashes of checking that box, so I will check that box, but I'm giving it I'm hesitating, you feel me? As far as a passion and hunger to want to keep driving and be better, it seems like Crypt absolutely checks that box as well. It seems like Crypt is hungry to improve and prove people wrong and get to levels and to reach new heights and to keep raising the bar for the platform in his own lane. As far as his uniqueness to the culture in the game, other than soloistic instances, I can't say that Crypt brings something to the table that maybe someone hasn't already brought before. While Crypt has distinctive characteristics and distinctive flows and distinctive features, I can't say that it's 100% unique. He's following a theme, and I think the more he delves into a unique path within that theme, the more I could see it being its own wave. But right now, I feel like the reason why maybe he hasn't been able to transcend platform is his creative direction and ability to stand out from the crowd of people who make that type of music, because there are a lot of loud people, even if it's a minority of people, that just make that type of music and are really in your face about it. So to transcend all that bullshit's hard, you know? And I don't think Crypt does enough to transcend those criticisms just yet. As far as a production, the music, and the mix, I feel like when he's more experimental, yes, he absolutely checks this box. I feel like when he's genre blending country and hip-hop, yes, he absolutely checks this box. I feel like Joey Nato's production can lack from time to time, and I feel like sometimes the mix can lack from time to time. He is one of the more professional sounding mixes on YouTube, so I just want to say that too. To me, this is again another hesitant check, but I'll check it. Memorability, again, other than for the content matter and the initial shock value of hearing that kind of content, and again, it's more shock value for me and like listening to the storytelling than it is directly relating to those instances, because I don't find myself directly relating to those instances that Crypt speaks on. It doesn't really stick out in my mind to other people who maybe have lived a little bit of a lifestyle that is so outlandish to me it almost is fantasy, you feel me? I feel like Crypt still needs to do a little bit more to stand out in his memorability and in his lane. I think that goes a little hand in hand with the uniqueness. As far as Crypt's personality, I love Crypt's personality. He seems very willing to share a spotlight. I'm a very similar guy. I think that's awesome. I think there's important people who should be put on, and life is too short. And as far as a human, Crypt seems very, very redeemable. I love his personality, I would say. And as far as his marketability, he seems very marketable even with what he's doing. He has a theme, which is why it's marketable, but I just feel like the couple spots that I feel like he's lacking his uniqueness and his memorability. I want something a little bit more experimental, a little bit something more reflective of the actual Crypt, not just Crypt the name. And over time, as Crypt gets more comfortable, over time as Crypt becomes more willing, I don't think he could be more willing to put more of himself on a record, but over time as Crypt becomes more sentient on making a sound and making a wave, and just more present as far as like perfecting a sound comes, you know what I mean? You have a producer now, you could talk to a guy and you could literally, no matter how, it comes down to how good you communicate with that guy, make something you've never heard before. And I feel like he gets close and he gets there from time to time, but he hasn't fully capitalized on it yet. Will Crypt be mainstream? Again, I don't think anybody is incapable of writing a hit song, and if nothing else, this proves to me that Crypt will be more capable of writing a hit song. Like something I really love about Earl Sweatshirt, for instance. Earl Sweatshirt runs this style of music that is dark and scary in a way. He's so matter-of-fact with how he spits that you really understand a mental state of Earl Sweatshirt. Earl Sweatshirt's music, especially recently, is really, really interesting. And I think if Crypt applied some of that mindset to his presentation, because again, he has energy from time to time, but when he wants to be lower energy, because that's really different instrumentation, Earl found a different way to convey an emotion, and it's through chaos. And I feel like Crypt would work really, really well in chaos, as long as it's systematic chaos. And I feel like the more he fuses calm country with maybe some country rap, with maybe some fast rap, and then maybe some of that style of music, we could see him impressing fast rap fans, the country fans, the legit like hip hop culture rap fans who maybe are the ones who put him in that fast rapper box because they don't want to look deeper. The more he pushes unique styles of sound like he has started doing with this project, I think the more Crypt will answer that question to be a yes. Does this do it for him yet? I don't think so. But is he getting there? Absolutely.